Roger,
Michael,
good to be here.
Nice for you to have me.
Of course. So this morning we come in. It's Sunday morning. I pull up to we're in your office in your building, and I see your car and the license plate for the people. And we've known each other for a while, and I think about that expression, and I think that's a good place to start. Why do you have for the people? It's your tagline on your firm. As soon as you walk through the door, people see that. What does that mean?
Well, when I look back at my journey to where we are now, it's really been about staying true to simple ideas. People deserve to be heard, respected, and protected, especially when you're going through something so difficult as our clients go through. And what got me into law was more than that. It was about, it pushed me to build something different. I didn't just want to be a person who was running a law firm. I really wanted to lead a team that fights for the people in a way that actually feels human. And sort of that's been my North Star from day one.
So you started out up north working as a law clerk, and then you decided to go back to school and become a lawyer. So what led you to make that decision? Was there something that you can recall? Was there a moment where you said, there's more that I can give?
Actually, the journey is even further back than that. When I was in high school, I needed a job. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, so needed a job, and I was working throughout high school, sometimes up to 3 jobs. One job I actually got was as a personal support care worker. Back then, the legislation was much more lax, and when you're up north, you're just happy to get somebody who's breathing sometimes to be able to fill in any job. And so I had some experience doing personal care because of a family who had some disability, and so I applied for a job.
So how old are you at this point? Like 16 years old?
I'm 16 years old.
Yeah.
And so I get a job in a Timmins Resident Action Handicap Group, some name of that sort. And it's a unit with about 16 people that are living and in a common area. They each have their own sort of units, and each one of them comes with a different disability. I would say the majority were either quadriplegia, paraplegia, MS, even very severe rheumatoid arthritis, muscular dystrophy, things of that nature. And so the job was basically 24 hours. They would have support care. They would be in their own units, but they needed sort of attention along the way through the day with activities, daily living, and things of that nature. And I started working with these people, and what an eye-opening experience. So I'm 16 years old, and not to be too crude, but I'm actually taking care of people's activities of daily living, like their personal care. Mm-hmm. So you become really humbled very quickly, and you grow up very quickly. Mm-hmm. My friends are out, flipping burgers, and I'm out wiping people's butts. Yep. So a different life. But what I learned from meeting with these people was that they each had their own individual story. And many of them came from personal accidents that they actually were involved in. Many of them motor vehicle, motorcycle.
Mm-hmm. They're victims, really, right?
Really, they were victims, right? Some of them had a bit of brain injury. Back then, we didn't really recognize brain injury the way we recognize it today. But now, going back and looking back, I for sure, I know that many of them had head injuries, but they had physical injuries for sure. And so in meeting them, I got to learn about their stories, and they were really fighting. They were having a lot of trouble getting help through some sort of legal a system, either through the law firm they were working with, or maybe some of them weren't working with. They were working through some sort of agency, and they needed some advocacy. So as part of the work that I was doing for them was just trying to get them through the day. And sometimes it was just like, I can't get a hold of this person. I can't. So I started getting on the phone and started helping them. And I started realizing what a system that these people had to go through.
You're getting roadblocks.
Roadblocks all over the place.
Wow.
And so it drove me to want to assist them. And it started to get me interested in, the plights that they were going through and what is it that I could do to help them. And I'm 16 years old. What is it that I could do to help them?
Yeah, I know. That's
But
amazing.
I started to actually sort of research individually. I'd see some ads on the TV of different lawyers, and I'd start asking myself, I wonder if they could help them. I wonder if they could help them. That's sort of where my initial interest became in law, I would say, that advocacy sort of role. And from there, I went on to, and I mean, the story is quite long, but I ended up meeting one of the top lawyers in the Timmins area. And lo and behold, I went to school and became a law clerk, and then ended up coming back to Timmins to actually become his first law clerk. And from that point forward, it was just, I needed more. And so I went to law school, and now I've been practicing for more than 25 years. So it just seems like it's been a real journey.
But there's something there that is unique to you in that you did something. There's so oftentimes we see things and we might think, oh, well, this is out of my control. I'm just going to do my job. My role is to just come here as a personal support worker, and then I'm going to go home. But what is it that, I guess you've always had that?
I think I've always had that. That comes from both of my parents. I mean, both of them came from very humble beginnings and hardworking, and so I think I picked up on that trait early on. And I still remember being a young kid. Going to, we would have this ice cream shop that would be near my home, and we would turn in, my dad would come by, we'd all be in the car, anybody want ice cream? And I remember I was the only one who wanted ice cream one day, and he said, oh, we'll stop. And so I went and I stood on a line, and I was at, the back of the line. I finally got to the front of the line, and then somebody just came in front of me, this adult just came in front of me and just ordered in front of me. And I went, what? And I kind of scoured back to the car and said, did you see that? And my dad says, well, what did you do about it? Get out there and, fight for yourself. So I got out of the car and I pushed in front of him and said, excuse me, but I was here first. And I ordered. And I might have been
what did he do?
I might have been about 9 years old, 8 years old. You know what I mean? And
Amazing.
I think everybody was just sort of, jaws dropped, and they sort of went, okay, you are next. And
Now, and I'm sorry, this may be a ridiculous question, but do you remember the feeling that you had when that happened?
I remember the feeling of coming back into the car with the ice cream and my dad saying to me, sometimes you just got to speak up and become, you got to the front of the line, you started at the back of the line, and, I still use that today where I tell my own clients, I see you. I see the type of person that you've been your entire life. You've been that person at the back of the line letting everybody come in front of you. But now you're at the point in your life where you need to get to the front of the line and ask for help. Your turn is next. And I use that still to today to let people know that, you know what? They have to be able to be heard at a certain point in their time. And they've done everything right up until that point in time, but now they need help and they need to be that first person. So maybe it comes all the way back from them. I don't know. But these small little things sort of stick with you as you mature and you get older and you start looking back at your life at moments when you start saying, when did I become this advocate?
So having that experience so young in your life, someone comes in and probably sits in your boardroom, and this is probably where you meet with new, potential clients. Do you actually put yourself into their shoes? Is there like that empathetic part where you're seeing what they're living and then you live that too? And do you think that sets you apart?
I think so. I think what we do here at my firm and what I've sort of taught the people that work with me is we try to put ourselves in their shoes as much as possible. It's difficult when you're an injured person or a victim and somebody just says to you, I know what you're going through. It's more than that. You've got to be able to give them examples. You've got to be able to help them know that you know what they're talking about. So you've got to pull from your own background. It may look different, it may be different, but you have to start that conversation. You're building trust from the moment that they come into your office. And our firm is very specific about, you will see a lawyer in your initial consultation, which is different than a lot of other places. You might meet with intake people that aren't necessarily lawyers. Our firm prides ourselves on your intake process is with a lawyer, and more so than a lawyer, it's with a team.
First contact.
So first contact is telephone with a lawyer. Next contact is with a team. And because we work in a process of using every member of our team to help you, so that we're a law firm. We're busy. We have other clients. And so eventually there may be a point when you call and we are tied up with somebody else. So we need to know that somebody else on our team can assist you, and not just take a message and say, Roger will get back to you or the lawyer will get back to you. Actually have a meaningful understanding of who that person is on the other end of that call, and actually being able to help in a certain way. That maybe is something that we are different about.
For the people, you've lived it, and I've seen it in action. When something is not happening the way that it should be, so often all of us, not all of us, many of us will just let it go. That person didn't do what they were supposed to do. Better luck next time. Or I won't come to this establishment. But you are comfortable, or you're comfortable with being uncomfortable with holding someone to account in that moment, especially when they're in a place of apathy, because you know that they're standing in the way of delivering a better experience for, in this case, your client. So I just want to end up, because I want you to also take it to this point. How do you teach the people in your firm to be like that when you've lived it? And they may not have had the experiences that you have. Someone applies for a job at Foisey and Associates, and they're not you. But then how do you help them to see your vision and empower them?
Okay. Let me see how I can answer that. So for the people isn't just a tagline. It's a litmus test for every decision we make here at the firm. And what I mean by that is every time we do something, we're always thinking about how it can better that person, how it can improve them, even baby steps. And so we all sort of move with that same voice. We all speak the same language. It's like when you're raising children, you and your partner will come to an agreement, or you'll come to figure out that if one parent says one thing and then another parent goes around and says the other thing, it's just not going to work very well. Well, it's the same thing with our clients. We all got to agree that we're going to help. Because if one of us is not willing to make that extra effort, then it's not going to work. Our team is going to be fractured, because then clients will only want to speak with certain people. That's going to make it very difficult. Whoever they speak with, they're going to get the same service. They're going to get the same respect. That client is going to be heard the same way. And if not, then likely that team member is not going to continue working with my firm that much longer, because they will find themselves sort of on the outskirts of the team. So I don't lead with titles at this firm. I would say that I lead with trust. That's where the real momentum starts. And I think it's important. And when people feel safe to speak in our firm, they stop playing defense with regards to, our culture. So everybody feels like if they're going to say something, that the rest of the team is going to actually support them. So when you're working in that type of manner, the clients feel that. They feel that trust. They feel the difference between how everybody treats them. There's no differentiator. And so it makes it easier in one sense. And, working with different, groups such as Human Scaffold and what you've done for my team, communication is everything. And if we can't communicate as a group effectively, then it's going to be noticed by the clients that come in. So it's so important. I mean, it's not just about, Michael, one day, yes, you want to be a lawyer and you go to law school. Nobody teaches you about this side of, they don't teach you about, how to run a law firm. And they sure as heck don't teach you about the behavioral aspects of teamwork within a law firm. Mm-hmm. All of that is like 50% of what you need to understand to be an effective manager or founder of a law firm. We don't, we are in the business of law. We're lawyers within our own business, or we're law clerks, or we're case managers, or we're assistants. That's how we treat. And by seeing ourselves that way, we are so much more effective to clients that come in, as opposed to just, fighters for justice. I mean, there's a real balance of what you need to do. 50% is knowing how to do what we do, being able to know the law, being able to know how to advocate. But the other 50% is how we actually run our own business. And if we run a sound business and we all speak with one voice, our clients, they get us, they respect us, and they trust us. And then it allows us to do that other 50% like top notch.
So it's the craft of being a lawyer is half of it. Like, being up to date, knowing your stuff, knowing your craft. And then the other half is creating this experience for the client. But that's maybe in many ways the hardest part.
It is the hardest part. The hardest part at the beginning when you become a lawyer is actually understanding, making sure you understand the law. A law school teaches you how to find the answer, how to research, how to advocate. I would say, maybe it takes a good 8 to 10 years for most lawyers to learn their craft really well, where they feel very confident. And then the rest of their career, if they're going to run a law firm, is going to be about knowing exactly what you've just said, being able to know how to work within a business and work with a team. And if you're going to be the founder or the top of that firm, being able to keep all those pieces together. And that is by far the hardest part, but actually can be the most fun as well. Because entrepreneurship, and I find, I see myself as an entrepreneur, I enjoy that aspect of it. I enjoy seeing happy clients, and more so happy staff working with these clients. Because if you've got, everybody walks into an office and feels like they really want to work hard today, the clients are going to be the huge benefactor of that sort of that feeling. And so you're just automatically going to do good work.
Mm-hmm. So when we first had a discussion about, I put the shingle up, Human Scaffold started my company, and then we started chatting. It's kind of, in many ways, I didn't think that you would ever be a client of mine, because when I get to see what you're doing, it's already great. So what was it that made you want to work with someone like me when on the surface, other people might look, other law firms or whatever might say, well, he's already has everything. Why would you invest in like a company like Human Scaffold?
And others have asked me the same question, none of yours. I didn't hire Mike or Human Scaffolding to fix every problem we have. I brought you in to help build my future. Maybe that 80-20, analogy that people use, I think I'm there. I think I was there when I brought you on. But why should I just be happy with 80-20 when I could be 90-10 or maybe even 95-5? I want that. I wanted that for my team, which I knew my clients would be the automatic, would benefit from that. And so, since working with Human Scaffold, our team doesn't just communicate, they connect. And that's really different, People can say, we have great communication, but do they connect? And I think that's what you and your company has shown me, that it's different to have good communication, but it's really different to have a connection. And that has been really sort of, the beauty of what, and of course, depending on how much time we have, a lot of it has to do with PDA analysis or the PDA framework, which I'd love to talk about, because I think your viewers, and I'm sure many of them understand it, but for us, that was it. That was easily brought us from 80 to 90%. And then we're fluctuating within that 10% now all the time.
And so just so we're clear, because I think I get it, but I want to make sure you explain it. When you say 80, 20, 90, 10, what's the 80, what's the 20?
So the 80 is we're working at 80%. I think that
like optimization,
efficiency, happiness. We're meeting all of our targets at, on average, 80%. So that means some of them could be 100, some of them could fall below 80, some of them are 90, but on average, throughout all the time, we're working at 80%. Now, I don't want my clients to think that we're only understanding 80% of the law. No, that's not what it means. It means that the firm is functioning from a business point, a communication point, being able to operate efficiently. I think we were at an 80-20. But since we started working with your group, easily now we're at a 90-10. And I would say a lot of that was that piece about, we had things to learn about communication, absolutely. But that synergy of communication to connection, huge. And I think a lot of how I think we got there was through that PDA factor, that PDA analysis of understanding sort of the blueprint for bringing out the best in everyone that works here. That was just, that's been an amazing piece to where Foisey and Consultants has gotten to.
You have to take full credit for that, because PDA, personal development analysis, is a behavioral assessment that we use, and there's a lot of different behavioral assessments out there. This is the one that I choose to work with, and you embrace the basic concept of the REPN, the risk, extroversion, patience, norms. And then the cool part is that it happened to perfection, because you took the initiative to embrace that language so that there's a common language within the group. So recognizing that someone who would be quote unquote lower risk is not as comfortable at directly communicating with one another or sharing their thoughts with someone who is a bit more direct with a higher risk, makes a big difference in self-awareness, because now you have an idea who on your team you're speaking with, and then you can alter your approach. Is that an example of how we move from communication to connection?
Yeah. What PDA does is that, so we don't just manage people, we understand them. So that's a different concept, right? So if you understand how somebody is feeling behaviorally, you are in a better position to be able to work with them. But not only if you understand them, if they understand you. And that's what's so wonderful about this concept, because if I would have just did the PDA or, the analysis on myself, it might better help me understand me, but I wouldn't have understood the person that I was speaking with. And you're right. I've got a conglomerate of different behaviors within my firm And once I know if somebody's got more high risk, less patience, higher norms or lower norms, then you know how to work with them. Mm-hmm. You're no longer, or you could use the word manage, but I don't really like manage because I don't really like a hierarchy within the firm. There's got to be a boss, Somebody's got to be up there to sign the checks.
Make
and
decisions. And
you got it. And somebody's going to help to unload the dishwasher. Mm-hmm. And somebody's going to answer the phone and somebody's going to photocopy. But at the end of the day, everybody's got a role within the firm. And in order for them to do their role, to actually do it effectively, it's great if you can understand what makes them tick, what doesn't, how you may approach them, how you may actually combine two people together to work together. Sometimes people are like, oh, these two people could never work together. And I may have been a believer of that before, but I don't believe that anymore. Mm-hmm. I actually don't believe that because I've actually seen it happen within my own firm. I've had two top performers, let's call them Jim and Mary, and they kept clashing, when working together. Mary was this analytical thinker and needed to be very detail oriented, and Jim was this fast, gut driven, big picture type of guy. And they just didn't know how to work together. But once the PDA analysis was done and we understood them differently, then we could actually set the situation or set the stage of knowing, okay, well, Mary's going to need more prep time. She's going to need to be able to do things, and they're going to maybe be done before Jim comes into the picture, because then Jim is going to be able to work with Mary. Together, if they come together to solve a problem right away, that might not work. Mm-hmm. Today, Jim and Mary are some of my top two best people that can work together. And they love to work together because they understand their strengths and their weaknesses and how they each can pull each other up. And so I would have never understood that had I not looked at communication a different way. And that's what I mean about that connection piece. Mm-hmm. Now they connect because we understand them behaviorally. And it sounds kind of, well, who gets into, running a business and wants to know about somebody? It's not really that complicated. This isn't like psychotherapy going on here. This is really just understanding people's natural self and work self, And sometimes the way people are at work is very similar to the way they're at home, or it could be different. But understanding that is very interesting and it's very thoughtful. And now imagine a team of 15 people having all done a PDA analysis or a PDA, and now understanding each other's behaviors. And so when they work together now, they don't start looking at things in such a personal manner. So when somebody gives an off-the-cuff sort of remark, they don't go to, why doesn't he or she like me? Or what did I say? They're just like, oh, they're high risk. Mm-hmm. They're like that. So you know what? It's easier to forgive.
You're not excusing it.
You're not excusing it.
No, but maybe you see it's maybe not from a bad place.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the reason you're right. You're not excusing it, but you're understanding it in the moment. You don't go to that place before of emotion of, oh my God, and you walk away and you can't get anything else done. You're understanding that person differently. And why? Because you understand more of their behavior. And also a big part of what we do here is that we also work on workshops. So we move outside of the firm day-to-day business. We get together as a group and we do exercises, some of which maybe people might think are corny, but we get to understand the person outside of their work self. So when they do give some sort of flippant comment that you might never see as excusable if you only knew them in the workplace, but if you understood them and knew them outside of the workplace or in a workshop setting, you would get to know that this person is actually a great person, great family person, has maybe things in common with you. So when they speak that way or they give some sort of flippant comment, or there's somebody who can't move on because they're so detail oriented, their perfection is beyond the realm of possibility, instead of getting mad, you can understand. And so you work with them a lot easier. And that's what gives that synergy. And again, I get back to that connection piece.
You do. The fact that you just naturally wanted to get together and do workshops, and you even do off-site where you bring the whole team together and people are cooking for one another, and it's super cool. But it would be, I can see that some people would automatically think, oh, I could never do that. I could never do that with my group or my team. What was it that? Is it because you experienced that and then you wanted to recreate that for your own team? Like when you were a team member, you did that? Like where did you come across that idea that not a lot of people do? Like it's one thing to say, hey, well, let's have a workshop in the firm. We're going to do it for one morning because it's an investment, right? You're paying people to show up.
Right.
And I don't know, what was it that got you to see the value in that?
I think a lot of it comes with where I'm from. I'm from the north, and we don't have the things that people in the south have. We don't have big
convention
centers. We also, don't have a Wonderland, half an hour away from your home. So your fun and your getting together is always been in the community. A lot of camping. A lot of, hiking, a lot of outdoor stuff, a lot of things that sort of allows you to be out in the fresh air, in the community, and feel like different. So I go back to my experiences, some of my, most memorable times of growing up. And I even worked as a young adult in Timmins, even in a firm. And I think of some of the experiences that I did there and how it made people just open up and feel great. And it's always been sort of things that have been outside of the city. So my idea of wanting to allow people to feel that openness and the clean air, the environment. I know it sounds very corny, but there's something about being out in the wilderness,
100%,
where it's just you and the trees and the birds and hearing the noises, and it allows you to just feel really great. And so I thought, let's put people in that environment and let them see. I wonder if they would feel the way that I remembered feeling. So, yes, it is definitely, there's a bit of a challenge. Of course, there's a bit of a challenge. You want to put a group of 10, 12, maybe 15 people together in the wilderness for a day, a night. Wow. Now you've got all these other things to start thinking about, right? Sleeping arrangements. How are we going to eat? How are people going to communicate? People have other families outside. Do I have to pay them while they're there? You have to think of all these things as a business person. Is it safe? Is it this? Is it that? But if you really want it, you can find a way to do it. And it will look differently for other firms or other businesses than mine. But you can sit down and you can brainstorm that idea. And that's what I do at my firm. I have monthly meetings. And I sit down, and as part of that monthly meeting all the time, I talk about, wouldn't it be great if we could do X? And sometimes when I say it, people are like, they can't imagine it. And then I start throwing ideas out there, and I start saying, well, what would it look like? What would it look like so my firm, I'll just give you an example. So in my firm, we generally have a participation of about 12 people that will go on I'll call it an outdoor sort of long-range planning adventure. We generally do it, in the wilderness. We'll go through like an Airbnb or...
Yeah, Airbnb. I was going to say, I don't want people to think that it's like...
We're not camping.
No, you're not in a tent
We're not in
the
tent.
middle of nowhere.
We will rent something that, has all the facilities and things of that nature. Yes. And there's some nice places out there. They're just, out from outside of the city. So then you'll start figuring out, well, what will that look like and how... And I'll tell you... don't knock it until you've tried it. And if you don't think you could do it with everyone right away, then maybe start with your top management people. Maybe
Yeah.
just the management group. Maybe there's just 4 to 6 of you. Try it out. And as part of that adventure that you're out there, talk about how it could work or be with the rest of the group. And there's going to be some challenges, no doubt. We have had people that we have had to take in that for whatever other responsibilities, we Ubered them in and Ubered them out. They couldn't
And for
stay
the
the
day
night.
session, they
They
go
come in for the
evening.
day session.
Yeah.
There have been moments where I've actually had people come into the office and we brought them in on the phone, but that's not ideal. It's not ideal. And actually we've done that a couple times. And every time we've done it, that person always said, I want to go because they missed out. Because what you get back from that is a bunch of memorable stories, connection pieces. Remember, connection's a real big thing for me. So now you've got different water cooler conversations. It's not just about what you might have watched last night. It's about remembering when this happened at the, at the long range planning that we did. Somebody burnt some toast that everybody joked about for the rest of the day, or
Yep.
there are so many great things. It's we could talk all day about it.
And in the day, the cool part is how we've evolved it over time, because you were doing this before and then I came in, and then, now we're, partnering on this idea, and, bring a whiteboard in and people have their own whiteboard. So we're actually doing workshops and doing activities and in the day. And then in the evening, we'll play funner games
Absolutely.
that aren't as digging into psychological or work type of things, just like more fun. Let's have fun and see each other in a different light.
Sorry, Mike, that is the piece of how it works so well with the PDA, because remember those examples we talked about in terms of somebody that's high risk? Well, that person, like we said, that's their natural state or their work state. And so they work that way. But when you get to know them on a personal level, like you will if you're doing these sort of outside workshops, you're more understanding and forgiving, and also feel like you can actually, I won't say fight back, but you feel more comfortable challenging that high risk person because you know them. You know them, that they didn't have an ill will intention of what they said. It's just how it may have come across. So you don't walk away emotionally drained and feel like that person doesn't like me or I could never work with that person. You understand them differently. So, doing communication workshops and those are all benefit. I mean, you get 100% benefit from all of that stuff. But if you want to go to the next level, and we're all about the next level here, you got to find different ways of being able to incorporate that work outside of just the firm. And so that's what we do. And every year we do something like this. And your organization has helped to facilitate those over the last 5 years. And every year we meet and we talk about a theme in terms of what we're going to work on. We've had themes of adaptation, communication, many different themes that we want to work on. And it's been really good. And the feedback has been amazing. And I don't think there's been any sort of negativity about doing it. I mean, there have been some times that we've had a lot of rain when we're away, but we've incorporated something to do if that was going to happen, and it was still okay.
Of course, yeah. It's just the other part, and this is the unique part of what you do, is that everyone takes turns preparing meals, and so I did that in high school. I went to leadership camp, and we all stayed in cabins, and everyone took turns being on breakfast duty, lunch, dinner. And then within that, there were people that were cleaning up, and there were people that were preparing food, and you've kind of adopted that method. And that's why when you were saying that, I'm like, that's amazing. That's exactly the experience that I had. But you're living serving others.
Yes.
It's so easy to go and say, let's just go to a conference center, go to a hotel, and then we'll go out for a nice dinner. And that's great. And that's another level of another activity, which you also do.
We also do that, yes.
But this of now having people present, set the table, support each other, and what is it that you would like? Can I get something for you? Because sometimes you're being served and sometimes you're serving.
Exactly.
And playing that role. There's nothing beneath anyone, and you're living that. Like, so.
And you have to learn how to adapt, because listen, we've got a lot of carnivores in our group, but we also have a couple vegetarians and a vegan. Okay. And that's just today's world. And so you have got to adapt to a situation. So when you're in a group and you're figuring out what are we going to make for dinner that night as our team, and on your team, there may be nobody who is vegetarian or vegan, but the team you're cooking for is got that, has a vegan person or vegetarian people. You've got to be able to figure out, what are we going to do? Are we all going to eat vegetarian? Are we going to have a mixture? Are we you know what I mean? And then realize the people that, now imagine if you're the only vegan in all 15 people, how you are feeling about wanting to, oh my God, I don't want these
putting people out.
Exactly, right? So you got to be able to do. So all of the things that you have to think about and work with, it's just like the things that you would have to do when dealing with clients. They're not all the same. Some of them have differences, idiosyncrasies. Some of their personalities are different. So you're experiencing this even within your own firm, so that when you're working within your own firm and with your clients, you're knowing how to adapt as well. So that's why adaptation was a huge theme for us. 1 year, because we knew that if we could learn how to do it within our group, then we would be so much better to do it with our clients.
And I want to because I'm thinking about an activity that we did, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because I think it was a really valuable thing. We came up with this idea of the Discomfortable meter.
Yes.
Right? So it's like 5 levels. Top one is really uncomfortable. Second one is uncomfortable. And then we created a word, discomfortable, where you're kind of uncomfortable, kind of comfortable, like that zone of proximal development of learning, and you're, kind of picking it up. Then there's comfortable, and then there's really comfortable. So we wrote this on the whiteboard, and we got everyone to go up and say, what percentage of the time should you be in each one, these 5 areas, right? And we talked about it beforehand, and we were thinking, okay, where do we think people are going to be putting? They have 100%. So where are they going to break it down? So they all wrote it down, and then they went and put it on the whiteboard. So I'll stop it there and just get your thoughts on that exercise, and where talking about adaptability, what does that challenge people to do?
So today we still use Discomfortable, and we still use that chart. It's an easy way for when I am going around, or my management team is going around and speaking with people. We don't need a big explanation as to how busy they are, how not busy they are. It's almost like we've created this safe way of speaking to each other. How's your workload? You know what? I'm comfortable. Okay. We're like, comfortable is okay. You can be comfortable. But then we will get people that say, I'm discomfortable. And they understand that to be that they are kind of working in their optimal way. So it's kind of like when you go to work and you got in at 9 and you left at 5 and you're like, wow, did the day ever go by really quick? That's kind of discomfortable, because you were busy enough that it actually went by really well and you had a great day.
Some people might say they're engaged. I felt really engaged.
Exactly. Everything, and it doesn't mean that everything went perfect, or it just means that you were able to get things done and you felt that you were engaged. You felt that you really were doing great work that day. But it's okay to understand that sometimes you're going to be uncomfortable. And there might even be opportunities in your year that you're going to be very uncomfortable. So what we talked about in that exercise, and what we sort of grew from it at the firm, we don't want anybody to be in the very uncomfortable or the very comfortable state. It doesn't mean you won't ever fall into that, but that's almost like a 10% of where you might be throughout the year. And what it generally means is, when you're very uncomfortable, it means that you're extremely busy at work and you've probably got some sort of outside issue going on. Maybe your kids have been sick for a while. Maybe you haven't been well for a while. Maybe somebody passed in your family. and you're busy at work. So you've got some extraneous stuff that's going on, which makes your sort of situation very uncomfortable. It's not just your work. When you're very comfortable, it means that you're probably bored. But are you bored because you just finished a project and now a new one's going to start, so you're only bored for a couple of days, or your boss has been sick and away and hasn't been able to come in and meet with them? Is that going to be there for a long time? It shouldn't be. It should be something that you're just sort of dipping into, but then you're going to be back either too comfortable, very uncomfortable, and then working towards being discomfortable. So it's understanding why you're in that. So in the office now, we could actually go to somebody, and people have said to me, I'm really discomfortable. Wonderful. We understand what that means together. Yep. We don't need to talk about what file. We don't need to talk about what. But if somebody says, oh, I've been uncomfortable for a while, we will sit down and we will try to figure out why that is. Because you don't want them going into very uncomfortable, because that means maybe they are way overworked, or they need some help because something's going on, and we need to keep them okay. You can't be in that state, because what happens when people are in that state, either the top or the bottom? They leave.
Yeah.
They leave, they're unhappy, they're bored, or they just can't handle it anymore, and so they're out. And so if you know where people are and you're always working towards that discomfortable place, it's like you have the happiest medium of your firm.
But you have to dip your toe into very uncomfortable waters to see your limit sometimes.
You have to know what it feels like.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know what it feels like, then you won't know when you're there.
So this conversation we just had on this discomfortable meter, now that I'm tying it back and I'm thinking of what you said before, I think that, tell me if I'm right, this is an explanation as to how you can move a group from 80-20 to 90-10.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is another one of those pieces, right? Because 80, you're great, but 90, you're amazing.
Yeah.
And like I said, I keep coming back to that sort of, that's what the difference when we started working with Human Scaffold is that, our team, we get to that connection piece, feedback flows, accountability is clear, and everyone is sort of rowing in the same direction. And that's the beauty of it. You're just moving in the right direction. It doesn't mean that you don't have hiccups. It doesn't mean that there won't be issues, but that's when you understand how to adapt to those stressful situations, and you're capable of doing it because you've worked in it, you've experienced it, you sort of learned the lessons in the workshops, but then you actually were able to apply it when that situation came. And good leaders and managers, and I have a lot of good managers in my office, are able to tie that back to those exercises. So it's not just about that you go there and you do this, but it reminds them. They're good at saying, remember when we did that, that year when we went to Collingwood, or we went to Blue Mountain, we go to nice places, or we went to that space. Remember when we did that workshop? That's what this was, right? And we learned, we built something there, and now we put it into practice here. And it works.
It reminds me so much of teaching when I was a high school teacher. And a student would miss a week. Sometimes legitimately, oftentimes it was for whatever, non-legitimate reasons. And they'd come back and they'd say, what did I miss? Like, you missed so much. You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean, what did I miss? You missed 75 minutes times 5. Well, can I get the notes? Of course you can get the notes, but you didn't live it.
Yeah.
That 75 minutes makes a huge difference. Just like going to the long-range planning makes a difference. Could you go back and read about it? Could I create a blog on the experience? Could we show this video of what it means for discomfortable? And okay, well, I'll just catch it on the video. Yeah, but it's not the same.
It's not the same.
It's not the same as experiencing it and the emotions that go with it, because those are the things you remember.
That's right. And that's where we had people in our group initially who were a bit, I don't know that I could do this. I don't know that I could find a way to still be able to have my caregiving responsibilities at home to get away for 2 nights. But then when they missed out on it and they came back and they realized they found a way, or we worked with them to find a way.
Like you said, the Uber, you might just...
It might be something like that. It might just be about, hey, listen, one thing that we do is we treat it as an annual event. So as soon as we finish one annual long-range planning, we've already booked the next one within a month. So that means 11 months you've got notice that we are doing this. So it gives a better opportunity for people who think they can't do it to be able to plan for it ahead of time.
And for context, it's 3 days.
Exactly.
It's not like 7 or 8 days.
No.
Yeah. I want to touch on something. We've talked about the PDA, we've talked about the risk, extroversion, patience norms. The one thing that really I remember when there was a light bulb moment for you with risk, and you identified with that ability to embrace and help me. Confrontation isn't the right word because it has a negative connotation.
Yes.
But that idea of addressing something, full. I want to say full frontal. That's not the right word.
No,
but you know what I mean. Like you're addressing the issue directly.
Yeah. So
and it could be an issue. It could be a positive thing. It could be something that the experience of people that have a lower risk, that are non-confrontational, want to smooth everything out, don't want to trouble people. I was going to say something to you, Roger, 3 months ago that I held back, and you're like, I wish you would have told me because it's an amazing idea, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it doesn't mean that if you're a lower risk person, you can't ever exhibit some of those other behaviors. It's like, how do you move people out of that comfort zone? And vice versa. How do you also let people that are a little bit too much pull back? It's like this constant push and pull.
Absolutely. And I think when the group sees they understand or can put sort of a definition to what it is this behavior is, and we can start. So we talk in our office. It's so funny because people, if they came in and watched us, we use the word risk, patience, norms, and extroversion like all the time. And people would wonder, well, what are they talking about, or why are they identifying that? We identify clients that way because once you get to understand those personalities, we can easily say, so, if I'm quickly going into a meeting or meeting a client, somebody could just say, what's their REPN? And they could give me their REPN, high risk, low risk, extroversion, what's their norms, what's their patience. Based on just our experience with it, I already know how I may speak with that client. And
you may be right, you may be wrong, but it's giving you a starting point, which you wouldn't have had before.
You got it.
Anyway, sorry, continue.
And so, and when you were talking about risk, the other thing that what you learn about when you're leading a group with we'll use risk as an example because risk is always very interesting, is that how you manage a person with high risk is way different than how you manage a person with high norms. So people with high risk, in my opinion, they need to be told right away. Mm-hmm. So if they do something or they say something, you have to address it right away. And I experienced this within my own firm. And I had to work with it to understand it. So I understood who my high-risk people were, and then I understood that I had to address it right away. I also had to learn how they wanted to be addressed. Do they want to be addressed in the moment in front of everybody that's with them, or would they like to be pulled aside and be addressed? But either way, what I learned is that high-risk people need to be addressed right away. Some of them are okay with being addressed in the moment in front of everybody else while they're there. Others don't like that. They would rather be pushed aside within that same short period of time. And when I say short period of time, it could be within the hour, it could be within half the day or the day.
Yeah, you don't wait for the year-end review.
Well, when you mention year-end reviews, it's kind of one of those pain points that I see. In my firm, your annual review in my office is no more than 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. Now, some people may say, wow, 20 minutes. Well, we always start off the conversation the same way. If today we're going to speak about all the things that I wanted you to improve about, we're already starting at the wrong spot.
Yeah.
You need to address these issues as they happen. So my annual review with people is more to discuss, maybe compensation and goals. What are the new goals you wish to achieve? What goals do I see that
proactive, not reactive.
Exactly.
You've already managed the reactive stuff throughout the year in the moment.
In the moment, along the way. And like for some people, it's really in the moment. And for some people, it could be at the end of the week. It could be the Monday morning. It could be the Friday afternoon. If you know who the person is and you know who they are and you know what their background is, you will know whether or not this is a Monday morning call, Monday morning chat, Wednesday mid-afternoon, or Friday before the long weekend. You will get to know which employees or coworkers that you want to have these conversations with, because you understand them. You've had that communication connection piece with them.
Mm-hmm. So to simplify that high risk, so people are listening and they're like, well, what do they mean by this high risk? It's like someone who is a direct communicator, maybe blurts things out, has no problem sharing their opinion. As a rule of thumb, not always the right answer, but you could safely assume that if they're like that, then they like to be communicated that way as well. Whereas the low risk person who's non-confrontational would never ever dream of being like that. But one learning is that no, that's how that person wants to talk to you. It's like, because I've had people that are low risk people say, "Oh, what's it like with a high risk person?" Oh, I couldn't even imagine being like that. I'm like, well, they can't imagine being like you. They don't even imagine that the other person would ever think that way, right? So
exactly.
So that helps them to toggle their own behavior in the moment.
Yeah, and some people think high risk is, like you said, bad. It's not bad. It's just who they are. I mean, there are many positions, many jobs that people need high risk people. And if they don't have high risk people, they're not going to be effective in their job. So it's good. Having a balance is good. Lawyers, there are a lot of lawyers who have high risk. I would say there are a lot. In my office, though, I don't have very high-risk lawyers, but they're just as effective. I've got high risk, but they're just as effective as I am in terms of our advocacy, in terms of what we do. They're just different, and it's okay. And that's why when you do this analysis, like you've told me and my staff, we're not. It's not a test. There's no right answer. It's just an ability to be able to know where you sit on this spectrum.
So you mentioned risk. You mentioned entrepreneurial yourself, and it's like another benefit of high risk is introducing possibility. That idea of not holding back. You're not thinking, oh, I got this idea, I'm not going to share it. No. Let's imagine if it's like that, and you have that. You're really good at that, and now that has led to other things that you do outside of running a law firm, which most people would think I couldn't even imagine doing anything else, right?
Yeah, I think that does give you that edge in being creative and sort of wondering what else is out there for you when you've got a bit of high risk. I think most entrepreneurs probably have some high risk in them. And so for me, lawyering is coming, having a problem and finding a way to fix it. I had an issue some years ago where a client was posting social media, which was not very helpful to their case. And it actually created a perception that was not a reality for them because, social media many times is just really a snapshot in time. It doesn't really give you a lot of understanding context behind a photo, but it can actually really tank a file. And so that happened to us in one of my cases. And so in order to fix that problem, I creatively, with the help of one of my business partners through another venture of mine, we developed a product called Private Footprint. And Private Footprint is an app that law firms purchase in an effort to be able to look at their clients' social media through a permission-based sharing tool, which is what the Private Footprint app does. So what it does is it allows a client to give you access without knowing their credentials of bringing in all of their social media for the 5, top platforms into a database, and allows you to chronologically look at it from date of loss. So what was their life like pre-date of loss, and what was their life like post-date of loss? And that gives us a lot of information. So initially, law firms are interested in knowing, is my client going to post something that's going to be problematic or seen to be problematic post date of loss. So they're interested in knowing that, because clients just don't stop posting. But once they've sort of understand, and clients come to understand that posting may not be the best thing because it's taken out of context most times, then law firms start looking at, well, what about all this pre-date of loss information? How is this life being led beforehand? So it's almost like a shield and a sword, right? The shield is, being sure that you understand to protect against, posts that might cause a problem for you. But the sword is, being able to introduce all of this, 10 years of pre-date of loss posts and pictures and videos of how active and how amazing life was before the accident, so that a jury or a judge could get better context as to who this person was before the accident. And so we developed this product, and it has been an amazing tool that we have been able to take across North America, predominantly in the United States. Mm-hmm. And so risk has been a good friend to me, because if I didn't have a bit of risk, I'm not sure I would have gone to doing that type of venture.
Possibility. What's out there. And so just to dig in a bit, so I understand, it almost seems like a private footprint is peace of mind.
Yes.
For the firm, for the owner of the firm, the lawyers that are managing a file.
Yes, because Private Footprint gathers social media evidence. Social media posts are just another form of evidence. And so today, the courts and legislation is recognizing that it's evidence. So how are you going to collect that evidence? It's not about even, if somebody asks for it. It's expected now that you produce it, or you collect it, or you preserve it. And so how are you going to do that? It's not an easy feat. If you think you can just go and start collecting, and if you may even be able to collect it, how do you assemble it into an organized fashion so that you know what's before your accident, what's after your accident, what's relevant to the case, what's not relevant to the case? And that's what Private Footprint does. It assists you with being able to organize that and into, reports, so it takes away, just thinking of some of our clients in the States, who used to have departments of people managing client social media. Now, they still have those people working with them, but they're using it to their advantage. They're using the pre-date of loss to build their file as opposed to protect against it. And so that's the beauty of it. It's very cost effective. Something that would take you 6 to 8 hours before to do, you can do in 5 minutes. In terms of printing a report. So this is a tool that I built that's been an exciting adventure that I've sort of moved to, and it sort of came out of, my love of the law and my interest in business, my entrepreneurship, and my risk. All of those things put together sort of maybe got me to that place.
It almost seems like ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT now. I can't go back to not using it.
Correct.
Right. It saved me time. It doesn't tell me what to do. I don't put in questions and say, tell me what to do. It's like having a little friend that's there and always reliable and dependable. And I couldn't imagine going back without it. Of course I could, but
right.
Why would I? Right. So it seems like Private Footprint is kind of that type of thing, saving time.
It is. It's now become what we call a file opening process. So when you're in personal injury law, like we are, there's certain things that need to be done as soon as a client signs up. One of them is order clinical notes and records, if it's a car accident, order the motor vehicle accident report, hospital records, employment file. Now you order your social media. and how do you order your social media in an efficient, cost-effective manner? Well, that's what Private Footprint app does.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So when we look at all of the things that you've done you once told me if being a lawyer didn't work out, you were going to be a high school teacher. So what a trajectory that would be and how different that would be. This is the path that you've taken. When you look back at your career to this point, and there's still a lot more to go. I don't want to, pretend like this, you're going to announce your retirement today or something like that. Right. But, what is it that you think you're going to remember looking back on your career? What is is there a defining part of your career and how you've decided to build Foisey and Associates?
That's a great question. At the beginning, when I sort of created this for the people tagline that I think Doug Ford has used, or I've seen it in the United States and some of the other law firms, but I've had it around for a long, long time. In fact, it came to me when I got into law school. I had worked with one of the clients at the Residents Action Group in Timmins when I was a personal support care worker. Maybe this is where we started and maybe where we can end. And I worked with a client. His name was Howie. And he was one of my favorite clients. We talked about everything, and I think I was able to help him, and he helped me to actually convince myself that I needed to go into some form of advocacy. So that would have been when I was 16 years old. When I got to law school, I was 26 years old, so that would have been
like a decade.
A decade. And he was one of the first people I called when I got to law school.
Wow.
And I stood in front of Windsor Law School, and there was the sign, and I called him, and I said, Howie, you'll never guess where I'm at today. He said, where? I said, I'm standing in front of the Windsor Law School. And he said, Roger, I can see it now. Roger Foisey for the people.
Wow.
And it gives me shivers when I think about it. I went back to my residence, which was across the street, and I had one of those old computers that we used to put taglines, and they used to run across your monochrome. And I put Roger Foisey for the people. And it used to run across my screen every day as I went through law school.
Wow.
And that's sort of what my journey's been. It's always been for the people. And that's what I want to be remembered for. All the things that I've done to help people along the way. I think that's, as cheesy as it may sound, I really believe that that's what I've wanted to achieve. That's what I have achieved. And that's what I hope to continue to achieve until I decide that it's all over. And you're right. It's not all over. My wife says she probably will be pushing me in a wheelchair right into the courthouse, right up until the end. So
I agree.
So maybe that's what I remember the most and what I carry with me the most, and what a great opportunity to bring me down memory lane here today to talk about this. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate you and Human Scaffold has been able to really move me to that extra 10 or 15% that I never thought I could get to. And so together, it's been just an amazing journey to be doing this with you as well.
Yeah, awesome. And look forward to more adventures in the future.
For sure. Thanks,
Yeah.
Mike.
Okay. Have a great one. Thank you.
Too.